Have you ever felt like friendships at work are weird? Like you might be friends with someone and you might go through the most intense period of your life together, the highs, the lows, all this stress. And then as soon as one of you quits, you never see each other again. It's like a weird friendship breakup. Or have you struggled to work out, can I be friends with the boss? If you're a boss, have you wondered, can I be friends with the people I lead? Well, today on the show, we are talking about how to friend at work, and I'm joined by my friend, Steph Clarke, who is the founder of 28 Thursdays, an amazing business that helps organisations navigate the future of work, as well as facilitating strategy offsites with leadership teams. Steph, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shelley.
This is a podcast about making work work. You'll learn about leadership, career growth, and how to navigate those weird work challenges. I run a HR consulting business called Boldside, where I help leaders build epic team cultures. If you lead a team or run a business and you think I can help, let's connect on LinkedIn. My name is Shelley Johnson, and this is Work. Steph Clarke, welcome to the pod.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Yeah, this is round three.
Round three?
Yeah.
Is it really round three?
Yeah. I think one virtual during COVID. We did that one at RMIT.
Yes.
And then here we are in Newey.
And you have come all the way from Melbourne.
Well, from Torquay, actually. Live on the surf coast now.
And
Yeah,
Torquay is one of the best places.
it really is. I mean, it's kind of like Newey, but Victoria.
Yeah, a bit colder.
Yeah, right.
A bit colder, but like it's got the vibes.
It's got the vibe. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I'm so glad you're here in person.
I'm so glad to be here.
We managed to wrangle this together. And so today we're talking about how to friend at work. And you have an amazing Substack called How to Friend. I just want to open this. What has got you, firstly, this is not on the sheet in any of our notes. Why are you interested in friendship? Where did that come from?
It was one of those things that I think I've always been interested in. It's always been something that's super important to me. I've always put a lot of effort and time and thought into my friendships and who I'm being friends with, and and nurturing my friendships and things as well. And then when I moved to Australia 11 and a bit years ago, it was something that I was incredibly intentional about. Because you had to start again. I still have friends in the UK, of course, but I needed new friends because I was on the other side of the world. And then more recently, again, having moved 100 kilometres away from my Melbourne friends down to the surf coast, again, I've thought, okay, well, I need to, again, I have friends, they're in Melbourne, that's great, I can still see them, but I also still want friends on my doorstep, and part of the move was to have a more local experience and more local friendships. So, and all of that was kind of happening at a time that my friend Jules sent me this email. It was a newsletter that she'd got, and it was about someone who had celebrated their birthday, and they were talking about how you should celebrate the big birthdays. And I was so cross because I was just like, no, we shouldn't just be celebrating birthdays with our friends. We shouldn't just be celebrating big birthdays with our friends. There is so much going on in the world, and we need people around us. And I think there is that kind of sense of social fabric decaying in some ways, and we could, that's a whole other kind of conversation. And so we need the people around us, and we need friendships, and we need good community, and those things aren't necessarily the same. But and I just had this like big rant to her about this. And then I thought, maybe this is the book. And then that was the origin to the book idea that I'm working on at the moment, and then also the Substack, which has the same name, How to Friend.
I am really keen to get into this from a work lens because having seen all manner of friendships at work, some really good, some really bad, some friends with the boss that goes pear-shaped, some too friendly that goes even more pear-shaped. Where you're like, actually,
that's a different problem.
You've really crossed the boundary there. I want to talk about navigating friendships and relationships at work, and I've got a fair few questions. I want to start with one that probably is the most contentious, and we're going to kind of get through a fair bit of commentary on this particular one. And I guess I want to ask you for your take, and so I want you to think about this for a sec, and then I'll give you background context. Can you be friends with the boss? And the flip version is, if you're a boss, can you be friends with the people you lead? And I posted this on LinkedIn as a poll. Can you be friends with the people you lead? There were 1,770 votes. People overwhelmingly said, 53% of the respondents said friendly but not friends. So 53% of the 1,700 people said friendly, not friends. 4% said no, it gets messy. 27% said yes, 100%, and 16% said show me the results. So they didn't want to commit to something.
Yeah.
I want to get into this because there was lots of comments. We've got some of them here. What is your initial take on being friends with the boss?
It depends.
Depends.
And I think, and reading through a bunch of those, and there were so many comments. You went viral on this one, which is amazing on LinkedIn at the moment because it's a weird dead zone. Yeah. But a lot of people said it depends. It depends on the person. It depends if you were friends before they were the boss, and maybe we'll get into the situation where maybe you were peers and you could, and that was kind of fine to be friends and, as peers, but then one of you gets promoted and then there's that, and we can maybe get into that sort of situation. But it depends because, if you're able to still have hard conversations. And what was really interesting in reading through some of those comments was, if you're friends, it makes it harder to have the hard conversations. And my instinct, I had such a visceral response to that. I was like, oh, no, it makes it easier. And I've certainly been in those situations before, because you've got a really good basis, or you should have a really good basis of trust if you are friends.
Let's talk about that then for a sec, because I absolutely agree with you. If you're friends, it should make it easier. But for most people, they think it doesn't. What is the distinction there for you? You're like, well, actually, if you're friends, you should be able to have harder conversations, versus the majority of people saying, no, that's the thing that creates that's the exact thing that makes having difficult conversations harder.
It is that foundation of trust in my mind that if you are genuinely friends with someone, you've got such a good basis of trust, or you should have such a good basis of trust, that you can kind of cut to it a little bit more and just be like, hey, Shell, look, this thing's happened, or that thing that was going on or whatever, I need to have a bit of a gross conversation with you about it. And you can probably be a little bit more, you can probably take some shortcuts in some of the language and stuff as well, because the person understands you and they know your style and things like that too. So I think you can kind of go there a bit quicker without having to maybe work around it a little bit more, like you would have to maybe with someone who you're not as friendly with or aren't friends with. Now, I don't think to be a good leader you have to be friends with everyone that you work with in order to have a hard conversation. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But I know example, 100 years ago when I was an accountant.
It's so weird to me that it's funny, you've told me this multiple times and I'm like, I still can't see it at all.
Yeah. In my first life, my first evolution. I was probably in my fourth year or something, and there was someone who was a couple of years below me. Everyone loved her. She was such a bloody delight as a human. She was super fun. She was super nice. She was so kind. But she wasn't that great at the accounting bit. And because she was so lovely and fun and kind, no one wanted to have a hard conversation with her. And we'd all go out. It was a very social kind of workplace and stuff that we had, and everyone was young and whatever. Anyway, so I was particularly friendly with this particular person. And a manager came to me 2 years into this person's career and was like, hey, can you have a conversation with her? Because none of us really, you're friends with her, so you can do it. To basically tell her that she kind of sucks. She's probably not going to go through the next kind of promotion-y kind of cycle thing because no one had told her for basically 2 years that she really wasn't performing that well. And they came to me because they're like, oh, you're friends with her, you can do it. And I was like, I don't think that's my job.
What a stitch up.
I know. But I ended up doing it, definitely completely inappropriately. And sort of had to have this really awkward conversation with her oh, by the way, everyone thinks you suck. Obviously, I didn't say that. But it was awful because, and so it almost shows both sides. They came to me because they're like, oh, you're better friends with her, so you can do it. But because they were friends with her as well, they couldn't do it.
Yeah, wow. And I think when you think about, there's so many dynamics in that situation that are awful, them actually not taking on their role as manager to do that. What was it in you that stepped up to the plate in that scenario where you're like, okay, cool, I will do this? Is there something, because having interacted with you, I really value your say it straight kind of way of communicating. But is there something for you that's well, yeah, I will just step into that place even though it's difficult?
I think, I didn't have this language at the time because this was pre-Brené Brown being in my life or being in all of our lives, but it was that kind of clear is kind approach or mentality. Again, I wouldn't have put that language to it at the time or anything. This was a long time ago. But it was that kind of sense of this is really horrible and unfair, And so someone needs to do the nice thing, which is the hard thing.
Yes.
But the nicer thing is for you to know that, hey, you're really struggling. This isn't really working. And clearly something needs to change or whatever. She ended up leaving and going to a completely different career, which was way more suited to her and was amazing. But she could have had that a year earlier if someone had actually had a conversation. Like, she could have got out and been like, oh, actually, yeah, without that kind of experience of people, knowing that everyone kind of knew that, but no one had told her. Like, all of it was terrible.
Did she communicate to you when you told her and you're like, look, like 2 years in, not one of the leaders had told her that she wasn't performing, you come and tell her. What was her response to you like? Like, did she respond well? Was the trust lost as a result? Like, what?
With me and her?
Yeah.
No, not with me and her. Like, it was definitely a hard call, and she was pretty upset by it. But she was probably more grateful to me, but then kind of upset about how everyone else had behaved or hadn't behaved, I guess, because they hadn't done the thing. So, yeah, it was more and more about that.
I reckon that's a really interesting thing. When you have that difficult conversation, you do go out on a limb in a friendship in a genuine way where you're like, this is to serve you and to help you that we're having this conversation, even though it's difficult. Trust tends to go up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas what you're describing is then the trust is lost with the people who avoided it. So like, if you think about in any friendship where people don't say the difficult thing out of fear of upsetting you, and that goes on for extended periods, your trust in those people when it eventually does come to a head goes down versus the person who went out on the limb like yourself and they're like, well, I'm actually grateful that you told me the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've had that the other way around as well, where someone has given me, who I am friends with at work, has given me difficult feedback, and it's been fine because it's and maybe it's different when there's something more performance rather than behaviour, or like your whole personality sucks, like that kind of thing. Like that's probably a bit different.
I don't like that. Yeah, not really sure about that one, but like,
I've not been. Well, actually, I have been told that, but not by someone at work. So.
It's just like, I think it's, what's his name? I can't remember his name, but his memes, we would be able to bring it up. I'll have to search it in the break. He says, there's this really good tweet, I'll have to find who it's from, but he says, whenever I receive constructive feedback and they're like, don't take this personally, the best I can do is take it extra personally. It's just actually the best that I can do.
Yeah.
I will take that feedback about my personality sucking very personally. So let's then look at, we've got some of the comments here. I'm going to read Matt McFarlane's, then you can choose where you want to go.
I thought you might choose his one.
I did warn him that and if you don't follow Matt McFarlane, follow him. He does a lot of stuff on pay and benefits on LinkedIn, so very good info on there. He says, boomer response here, but no, I don't see how you can be friends with the boss and still be considered a fair manager. If you're making decisions that impact your team and you're friends with some of them, it can't be done fairly. Despite what anyone says, it also makes it that much harder to have a difficult conversation with them if you need to.
Wrong.
Steph's like, objectively wrong, incorrect. Your opinion is wrong, Matt. I've maintained friendships with people who reported to me after working with them, but I don't think you can be a true friend and still be a great leader.
Well, I think we've talked about some of that, about how wrong he is with that. Sorry, Matt. Sorry, not sorry. But I do get that piece around the fair man, like that favouritism. And there's a few other people who have mentioned things like favouritism and things as well. A few people who mentioned around if you came into the organisation or the team or whatever as friends already, how again there is that kind of perception. I think the optics matter in these sorts of situations because it's actually less about what you think the situation is than what everyone else thinks the situation is, particularly for people who maybe there is lower trust and therefore they're going to think that you are, have some kind of preferential treatment over those people that you're friends with or whatever. But it's really hard because we are humans and it's nice to be friends with people. And so it's very hard to then, if you're working somewhere for quite a while, to then to not, personally, I find it very hard to not make friends with people. Now, sometimes those friendships are just at work friendships and they're your kind of your ride or die at work and your work spouse or whatever. Like I love having a work spouse. It's great. But but then those people you may never, when you leave the organisation or they do or you do, you might never see each other again. But it's so weird because it's such an intense friendship or such an intense kind of relationship at the time. But then, you kind of both go your own ways. And you're like, oh, it just existed in that kind of really special moment.
That's, to me, one of the weirdness factors of work friendships.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I've had some amazing relationships with people that I've worked with, and as soon as I leave that job or as soon as they leave, we stop talking.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
I don't really know what my thought is on that, because I've also experienced that. I've also experienced the opposite, where actually sometimes you see each other more or actually spend more time with each other. Maybe sometimes it's even someone you had a pretty good relationship with at work, but then you end up friends with afterwards. That's kind of cool. But yeah, I don't know why it is, but I think because sometimes the conditions of work kind of create this kind of intensity of this bubble, but also the frequency. If you think about it, like particularly in the before times, and I wonder how remote work has changed this as well, because I've been working for myself since pre-COVID, so it's harder for me to kind of judge that completely. But certainly when we were seeing each other like at least 4 or 5 times a week, most of the time, like of course you're going to be really close to some people because you're seeing them more than probably all of your other friends. So, and you see each other when the bad thing has happened in the morning or when the really great thing has happened the night before or whatever, and you get that download. You get a daily download of that person's life. Not all of them, not everyone, etc. But you just get that intensity and intimacy and frequency really quickly, which are the things that are conditions for friendship. So, of course, work allows for that. Now, also, work creates the conditions for that to be weird because it creates competition and it creates kind of scarcity and it creates elements of kind of feudalism and things like that as well. So that's why things can get weird pretty quickly, because what you think is a really good friendship, suddenly when you add in the competition element or something, because there's only 2 promotion spots and, you two are going to go for it, and that's going to be weird kind of thing, then the elements of trust then can start to break down as well.
I love what you said there around frequency and intensity are like some of the grounds for having a good friendship. And I kind of think about the intensity of work, where lots of pressure, you spend a whole crap ton of time there, you have these really big highs, really low lows, also frequency. And then I kind of add into that frequency and proximity. I'm one of 5 kids, and me and my oldest sister, we've been talking a lot about proximity for relationships. So I think what you're saying there of frequency to me matters, but also like intentional proximity. And I don't know if they're different or the same, or maybe they overlap. What are your thoughts on like the impact of like just the sheer volume of time you spend with people at work, why that causes, like some people would say it's like trauma bonding at work, but like what is it about having proximity that leads to great friendships?
2 things. So the trauma bonding, I saw this meme, and I'm going to butcher it because I can't remember the exact wording, but they're basically saying that having a common enemy is not a great foundation for a good, like, strong friendship or good relationship. However, it does create that kind of almost like a proxy for a strong relationship. So then you get that in teams who are kind of trauma bonded over a terrible manager or a restructure that's happening or whatever. But it's not actually a great foundation for things, like having this kind of common enemy. So I thought that's really interesting. But it is something that we can all probably relate to because we've all been there.
Yes, absolutely. And I think speaks to the intensity. But as you're talking about that, I wonder if that's why when when you've got this friendship based on frustration, pain point, annoyance at whoever, the big bad organisation, and I say that in inverted commas because sometimes I think we overinflate how bad sometimes things are in terms of like pointing fingers at the org. I wonder if that's what means that when you leave an organisation, the friendship fizzles, because if it's that is the foundation.
You don't have a common enemy anymore.
So what is a good foundation then for a friendship at work? Like if you're looking at the common enemy, trauma bonding being an unhealthy kind of foundation, but common, what would be a healthy foundation in a work friendship?
I think the opposite to that, where you're actually, you just get on with the person or the other people. It's the same, to me, it's the same as things that allow for a good healthy friendship in any part of your life. It's, are you having fun together? Do you trust them? Are you able to kind of share things with them, which again maybe comes down to the trust kind of piece? And do they make you feel good? Like, I've definitely worked with some people who do not make me feel good. And, I might get on with them in other ways, but I'm like, oh, they are an energy vampire. So I might like them in these moments, but maybe they are quite tied to things like the common enemy or stuff like that. So they kind of end up dragging everyone into that kind of things to complain about, having a bit of a gossip, whatever it is. That's not as healthy or as helpful in a work kind of friend or any kind of friendship. But if it's someone you trust and you get on with, you're having fun, and they generally make each other feel good and better, like, that's a pretty good thing.
I want to pick up then on the energy vampire concept, and we'll eventually make our way back to some of these thoughts on can you be friends with your boss. But like with energy draining behaviours in friendship versus energy giving behaviours, do you have certain things, like I've got lists in my mind of draining behaviours and giving behaviours, but are there certain things for you that you're like, yes, these are pretty common themes of energy drainers that we need to look out for in a friendship?
Just always complaining about something would be my like biggest one. And I mean, that's the same with other friendships. This is not just unique to work. But for me, like this, it's like a real turn-off is someone who's always complaining about something and always really negative. And it's also something I catch in myself if I'm like having a bit of a bad week or, things aren't going as well for a period, whatever it is, that I'm like, oh, I'm becoming like that kind of person. And so for me, I mean, again, everyone will have a kind of their own repellents that they want. But also probably on the other side as well, that kind of toxic positivity kind of stuff as well, like the manager or whatever is like, no, everything's fine. Everyone's like, it's not fine. Everything's definitely not fine. So there needs to be this, I suppose all of that comes down to really honesty. You need that ability for a manager or someone to kind of call it what it is and say like, hey, we're going through something or this has happened and it kind of sucks. And we need to, band together, or there is this thing that's going to happen, or we've got decisions to make, whatever it is. But they're honest, and you feel that they are being honest with you as well. It's really interesting, though, because I think it was Rachel Botsman who did a piece a couple of years ago. I think it was with a Culture Amp talk that she did. And she talked about that transparency is often seen as like, a transparent culture or environment is really seen as a really good for trust. But actually maybe it's the other way around, because if everyone demands transparency, it's because they don't trust something. Because they trust that something is being hidden from them, so they're kind of demanding more transparency. Whereas actually, we often think of it the other way around. So in a high trust environment, people aren't asking for transparency because they just inherently feel that people are being honest with them. Yeah, that was my understanding of the point she was making. Yeah. And so then on the flip side, if you're in a low trust culture, people start saying, we need you to be more transparent. Because they feel like there's something being hidden from them. That's actually... because I was talking with someone the other day that was asking their managers for transparency. Mm-hmm. And now that you're saying that, I'm like, yes, if you're talking about what do I need from you, it's because this thing is lacking. Yeah. I find a couple of energy draining kind of behaviours for me. I think, yes, negativity and cynicism are definitely one. And I like your call out of the overcorrection on that would be like toxic positivity, which is extremely frustrating when you're like, no, look, can we just talk about the problem at hand that we're all dealing with? I think energy draining behaviours would be like someone having a big ego, being self-focused over others' focus. And I think that's really foundational for a good friendship. I mean, the other energy draining behaviour, I think, in friendships, and I've got a really good example of this in a work context. Go, spill the tea on like this terrible person. Name them. Names. I will talk about the behaviour, not the person. That's what we encourage people. Very clever. Talk about the behaviour. Don't talk about the person. The behaviour was like oversharing. But then I remember one of the psychologists who was part of a team I was working in, he referred to it as emotional hijacking. And I loved that because I'm like, every time I leave seeing this person who I worked with, I would feel so drained. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so drained. It must be just because I listened for ages. But then what he was describing to me is like, no, Shell, that person has emotionally hijacked a meeting, talked about
like all of their actual like really heavy stuff they need to probably talk to a therapist about. And that's why you leave feeling drained. It's not because like you're just listening for extended periods. You can actually listen for a long time. It's the oversharing to the point of the emotional hijacking and that the level of energy that has to be supplied or the level of oxygen in the room.
Yeah.
Like I found that oversharing thing to be a bit of an energy drainer versus when I think about energy givers, like I love these people who are really empathic listeners. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like people who can really deeply listen, they give you energy.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a really great conversation with an old colleague of mine. So we used to speak all the time. And then like basically for the last, and even after, so I left my last workplace like 6.5, nearly 7 years ago. And me and this person, we used to talk all the time. We were like genuinely, we were friends as well. We were kind of sort of adjacent, more peers in different teams. So there was never any kind of like weird work stuff then for us to get in the way, which is great. But then we just haven't really spoken to each other for like 2 years. And we've recently got back in touch and we had this great conversation the other day. Anyway, I said to her, I spoke to basically our old kind of boss the other day. And she was like, oh, did you just leave feeling so amazing from that conversation? I was like, I did. Because this particular manager both of us had was just like the most incredible and just would make you feel great. And she gave me some really hard feedback. She was the one, but she was also the one who is the reason why I now do what I do, basically, because she gave me this massive confidence boost about 10 years ago. And it changed the course of my career because she obviously saw something that then, and then we became friends. Like I went to her house for Christmas one year. So
Amazing.
we'd had this anyway. So it was amazing that we both, even that many years on, me and my friend were like, oh yeah, I felt so good after having that conversation. She had also spoken to that person recently as well. It was so good.
What, if you were to try to boil down what it was about, because those people, they feel pretty rare. They feel like unicorn rare.
Yeah.
Can you try to boil down for anyone listening who's like, Steph, I want to become that person. I want to become the type of person that people say, oh, did you just leave feeling good? What is it that what would you describe as the traits or characteristics of that person that made you feel good?
The things that work for me, because I think this is different. This person probably didn't, not sure, I wouldn't say they were polarizing, but there was definitely some people who didn't. That was not the relationship. But the things I really appreciate is that she was positive and high energy, but would call it when things were not going well. So, sort of finding that nice threading the needle we talked about just now around like not just being all sad sack all the time, but also no toxic positivity. She was really creative with problem solving. And you never really got to you never felt that she was in it for herself. Like you genuinely knew, especially if you knew her quite well and knew what was kind of going on and what she was kind of working on behind the scenes, that she was genuinely trying to do the best for everyone and trying to she would always put people in positions where they could thrive and believed in people as well. And she would call stuff. And that was it was often, if I think about some of the people where there was a bit more friction there, it was because she'd given them really hard feedback and did it in a way that was good and healthy and all the rest, but obviously not everyone responds the same way and blah, blah, blah. So she was just this fantastic leader that I learned a lot from. And she genuinely cared about everyone. And you knew that because when she joined the team or when she joined a team, she moved around a couple of times, she would go for coffee with everyone. She didn't care who you were or what you did. And she would know enough about you and your life, in an appropriate way to be able to kind of follow up with you and be like, oh, how's, blah, blah, blah. And even if she was not something she was interested in or whatever, like she would just, and I've worked with a couple other people who are like that as well. There was another leader I've worked with slightly more indirectly, but a lot over the last few years. And he's the same. Like to the point that when I've worked with his teams, nobody knows what kind of style he is in the different kind of like diagnostics and stuff. Because they're like, oh, I don't know. It's because he can like flex and move between all the different types for the different people he leads, which I just think is such a great skill to have.
It's picking up on something you said around she believed in me. Like I think it's really interesting because sometimes it's the combination of skills. Like I kind of think about when you combine various skills and it becomes a bit of a superpower. So it's not one skill in isolation. Like when you think about someone that you've loved working for, that's helped you grow, that's believed in you, that's done all this stuff, it's actually the combination of skills that make it good. You can't just separate it into, well, they did one thing. And I just want to pick up on two parts of what I heard you say. So you said the belief, that she had belief in you. The other thing I liked that you said is that she would call, like she'd call you on stuff. And I think those two have to go hand in hand. Like if I'm like, Steph, I can see your potential here and you have heaps of growth opportunity that you could step into, start your own business. I can see you running these things all over Australia and going to around the world, speaking on big stages, like doing the things that you do as part of your business. But she sees that 10 years early.
Yeah.
So there's the belief 10 years before you're doing that thing. Plus, combined with, and I'm going to call you when I feel like you're not living up to that potential.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Those two things, when you put those two things together, is like the superpower. Because if I just sit here and I'm like, Steph, I could see you running your own really successful business, speaking on stages, doing all this amazing stuff. Just last week speaking at South by Southwest. But then I see things in you that don't help you get to that potential and I don't call you on it. Well, then I'm not actually helping you get there. So it's one thing to have the belief, but it's the other thing to hold someone to the standard you know they can get to. Yeah. And I'm just digging into this going, I feel like when we go back to this question of can you be friends with the people you lead, I think the biggest point in this is we have to define what friendship is. And to me, that's friendship. I'm like, I want to be friends with someone that believe I can rise and will tell me, Shell, mate, friggin' what the heck are you doing? You're better than this. Step up. So going back to then Matt's.
Well, I think this just on that then, one of the problems we have in English is that we already have one word, friend, and that's it. Like that's all we've got. And like, yes, we've got, work friend or something.
Work
which
bestie,
again, exactly. Which, there is some element of nuance and people kind of get what you mean then. But things get messy because we've got one word.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really help kind of define or create that those definitions.
And when I love Matt so much and he's got an amazing podcast and he's fab. And for anyone who's not a HR person, REM stands for remuneration, which is a terrible word for pay. Remuneration. And everyone's also like remuneration. No, it's such a convoluted word. Yes. So he's working with money. And when you were talking about weird work friendship stuff, pay is one of them.
Of course it is.
Promotions are one of them.
Well, it's because power is one of them.
Yes.
Because power is a thing in any dynamic. When there's like a weird power imbalance, and those things create power imbalances or a perception of a power imbalance, then you're going to get weird things. I mean, you see that in friendships that are not work friendships and someone, in the friendship group, especially if you've been friends for a long time, someone gets a pay rise or seems, to be more successful than someone else or whatever, and that can cause a problem in a non-work context.
Exactly. Or if one person tries to exert more control over a group in a friendship where there feels like there's some kind of power play happening, I think where he says, despite what anyone says, it also makes it that much harder to have a difficult conversation with them if you need to. That, to me, speaks to the definition of friendship. Because if you define friendship as we're always amicable and things are always pleasant, I'm like, that's not a friendship I want.
Yeah. It's companionship, maybe.
Yeah, or like, it's like just, I don't know. I'm like, how would I define friendship? And I'm like, my definition of friendship would be, we grow together as people, we are in each other's worlds, we support each other, and we challenge each other to be better humans. Like, that's the type of friendship I would want. And I don't want to be in a friendship where things are just like amicable all the time or pleasant. And I had a recent, over the weekend with three of my beautiful friends, we had this really intense conversation of just being honest with each other, of going, hey,
why aren't we talking about this? Cancel this whole podcast. We're going to talk about that. I want to hear about that.
Well, yeah, so we were on this walk and it was really raw. There's been just a few little unsaid things, and I'm big on not having unsaid stuff in relationships. I think it's the start of the end.
So you started it, is what I'm hearing.
Yes. Oh, well, okay, yes. So and one of the people, like, I just heard you go into this thing and I just started to retreat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, well, thank you for nothing.
Someone's in the bush. You're like, where do I go?
Seriously, well, we were walking in the bush too. And so we were all in a line and like, I was in the middle and the person at the front was the one I was talking to and the person behind me is like, I started to try and step back and I was like, you come along with me too. Because we just had this really raw conversation of, hey, I sometimes feel like you're too busy to like hang out. Or I feel like, is there something going on with us because I feel like there's a bit of distance and I'm trying to work out how to navigate it and have I done something that's caused that? And so we're just having this very raw, vulnerable conversation. And then this beautiful person was like, hey, I feel I've been going through massive burnout. I've been really unwell and I have tried to protect my time and energy. And we were all like, why didn't you say that?
Yeah.
Like, why didn't, why we should be the people you're calling and saying, I'm actually not doing okay.
Yeah.
So then we had to dig into, well, what's caused that? And I think for me, I come back to, if I think about friendship, like there's moments in that conversation that felt really actually quite tricky.
Course,
and these are people I've been friends with for a very, very, very long time. But I know we left, there was tears in that conversation. There was like messiness, but we left being like, I'm so freaking glad we talked about that.
That's so good.
As you're hearing that, what are your thoughts?
No, that's great because that's what we all need more of because we're not doing, this is getting beyond the work stuff, but like we all need more of that and we need to be reaching out. We need to be like, hey, I'm having a bad time or noticing when there's something a bit weird with a friendship or whatever and just being like, hey, and a friend of mine and I do that quite often. Not that we are constantly like falling out or anything, but like more in that kind of, like, what's going on with you? Kind of thing. And yeah, and it's important because otherwise, what are we doing? We're just sort of being like nice around each other. And that's like, I've got a few friends where we're just at that level and that's fine. And we may go deeper, we may not, but that's okay to have like some of those friendships where it's, you catch up, you go for coffee, you have a nice time, but that's kind of it. It's okay. But we can't just have that. Because otherwise there's no depth and no support. I think that's the support thing that comes in that lower, that sort of deeper part.
We'll go to a quick break and come back in a sec. We're going to dig more into the complexities and nuances of work friendships.
Do you want to grow in your career? Are you after a fresh start or some inspiration? Or perhaps you're in a career crisis? The book Sort Your Career Out and Make More Money by Shelley Johnson and Glenn James is such a great resource at any stage in your career. It will give you practical strategies for things like getting a promotion, making more money, moving into a leadership role, taking career risks, or if it's time to quit your job, and so much more. You can find Sort Your Career Out and Make More Money wherever good books are sold or via the link in the podcast show notes. It's also available as an audiobook.
I want to go back to your energy vampire though. Like we've like danced around all over the place with this, but I saw a post the other week from Amy Edmondson, famous Harvard. Is she at Harvard? Not sure.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know where she is now, but
Fearless Organisation is the book.
Yeah. And she did this post, which I thought was great, about how you shouldn't bring your whole self to work. And I just thought it was so controversial and so provocative, but also so good because, and the point she was making was that not all of you belongs in every situation. The same as, the example of this I often use is when you go to see your grandparents, do you behave the same way as you would your friends when you're, out on a Friday evening having dinner or, whatever it is? Like, no. And that's not you being fake in either of those situations. It's just that you're bringing different parts of yourself to that. So why at work do we have to have all of ourself there? Of course, there's nuance to this conversation. This is not, all of one thing and none of the other kind of thing. And there's some stuff at work that, we are now luckily, hopefully in many places, although not everywhere, in a better position to be able to have more conversations around mental health and around, diversity and around sort of other things and other needs that people have to actually be able to work effectively. Like, yes, we need to be able to do that. And we need to be able to control ourselves. And same with any situation. Work is not the only one. That can be at the supermarket or at work or, with different family members or friends or whatever. And she was talking about the fact that it's all just like all of you is not helpful in every situation. So being able to the person you were talking about who is this kind of did this emotional hijacking of these meetings probably was bringing too much of themselves in that moment and needed a bit of emotional intelligence and awareness to go, maybe now's not the time and place for this particular thing or this particular moment. And sometimes we'll slip up and things come out and that's okay. That's fine. It's what we do with it afterwards. That's the important bit. But I just thought it was a really interesting post given where we've been over the last probably half a decade, maybe a little bit more, around bring your whole self to work. But actually also a lot of the people you're working with may not have the capacity for your whole self. So, whatever that is. But so I think, again, these things are not black and white in any way, shape or form, but we're messy, weird humans and we're being messy, weird humans around other messy, weird humans and none of us are actually particularly good at navigating that messiness and weirdness.
And I think there is a big difference between your whole self and your best self. And what is your best self in the various scenarios you might be in? So my whole self, I feel like there are certain forums where I am absolutely able to be that are not necessarily work. And so, for example, I feel like with my husband Sam, I am my whole self. Now, is that always helpful for him? Probably not. We're
going to bring him in.
And actually he's waiting outside. And in he comes, I will tell you, absolutely not. But so what he would see of me, and I often talk to him about this because if we were to compare, I don't know, this is a terrible, completely anti, I'm trying to be an accidental psychologist and I just say this.
Okay.
So if we think about our needs, he has really low needs. He's very chill, very calm. He's just a glorious human. Whereas I would say I'm quite high needs, intense person. And so, if you're like me and you relate and you're an intense person, when I get stressed, it overflows. And he doesn't do that. I'm always amazed. I'm like, when he's stressed, I don't really feel it because he's got this amazing way of keeping it true, of moderating his behaviour. Whereas, so he would see in me when I'm stressed, the whole house would feel it. And it's just this contagious energy. And because I'm so safe, I'm able to do that. Yeah. And we have lots of conversations about this type of thing. Whereas if I did that in a team, that's actually unreasonable and unfair to my team because if I'm managing a team, I need to be able to moderate my behaviour in the way that I'm not transferring all my stress onto the people who I lead. Whereas my relationship with Sam is different. It doesn't mean I don't still work on that and I absolutely need to. But it means there's more safety to bring the messiness of that particular trait. Whereas I would be much more conscious of doing that in my work sense. So I don't want my team to live in the wake of my stressy hecticness. I think it's unfair and it's not what they've signed up for.
Yeah.
Whereas and so that's where I go to what you're saying of there's some domains where you might go, okay, well, what does my best self look like in this context? And actually my best self in my marriage is much more authentic because that's actually the type of relationship we need to have versus in my work sense, I'm like, these people don't have to stay here. They could leave at any moment and just be like, you're hectic and I want to work for you. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just, as I'm rambling my way through this, and oversharing on a podcast, which
I'm just going to lie on the floor. My energy has been drained. So.
You're emotionally hijacking this day. I've flown all the way from Turkey to be here and now I'm tired. But just as you're hearing that, the difference between your best self and your whole self and which forums, how do you choose without obviously masking? And so this is where I love what you're saying about the nuance of this because it's not black or white.
No.
And but I like the idea of let this be a provocative thought. As you're just hearing me ramble my way through, are there any other kind of things that you're picking up or that you've noticed in yourself around the difference between your best self or whole self?
I think it is just being able to, it's that self-awareness of this is helpful, this is not. This is how I feel. But this is not how I need other people to feel about this. Because, number one, obviously, I just don't want to work with you. That would be... I'm joking, obviously. You'd be delightful to work with. How can I get out of this room really quickly? No, I think it's just that self-awareness that is needed. And knowing where those outlets are, though. So what is it you need to do to be like, if this thing has happened and you're like about to go, and go back to like Dr. Adam Fraser's stuff around like third space and things like that. Like if you're going from this really high intensity thing where something's happened and you're feeling really worked up about it and you're in that kind of hectic mode, but then you're going into a one-on-one with your team or a team meeting with your whole team or whatever, like what do you need to do between those things to kind of regulate, to use some nice like horrible therapy speak or something, to then be in a better position to then for that meeting, that one-on-one that you've got, so that you're not contagious to the other person or the other people, because that's not going to help them. Like they're also dealing with their stuff as well. Like they don't need yours too. And in that work context, like yes, you might then go home and be like, because that's you can do that, and that's a safe place for that to happen. And I don't think that makes you. This word authenticity is getting like such a bad rap at the moment, I think rightly so. But it doesn't make you less authentic as a leader to go into that meeting having like contained some stuff so that you can, be better for your team or the person or whatever it is you're doing. Like that's fine because, you can kind of deal with that afterwards. Now, you shouldn't keep that stuff like for a year, like just rumbling away inside you because you'll explode or something. But there is definitely, you kind of need to be able to like put stuff in a box for a moment.
Well, it's interesting even putting it in a box. Like in the Navy SEALs, who would be, I guess, considered one of the examples of the highest performing teams, like an elite team, they train them in compartmentalization because they know that a lack of emotional regulation impacts a team's performance. Now, that's not saying you don't have to deal with it. You do.
Yeah.
But so you have to have a way of dealing with and having a stress outlet. But if you can't emotionally regulate, the team can't perform to the standard that they need to under extreme pressure. And so I think about in a normal work setting, not in a military sense, I would see that as, and I'm glad you called out the authenticity piece. It's not a lack of authenticity. It's actually exercising the muscle of emotional regulation in the context that you're in. And there'll be other contexts where you're like, actually, me being really vulnerable with my emotional state is helpful for this relationship at this point in time.
Yeah.
But it's, again, I like the call out of self-awareness because without that self-awareness, I don't think you can exercise those muscles.
Yeah. And look, all of this has like, all sorts of other lenses over it as well, because what, someone thinks is appropriate from like two white ladies is like different to someone, a person of colour, a queer person, a guy, all of those types of things as well. And I think that's where these things get even more complicated because we've got all these other like societal layers and stuff and biases and everything like layered on. So actually what for us is emotional regulation, and people would be like, oh yeah, they've didn't infect the team or whatever. Like maybe that's different for a different person because they're just different personality or they've got a different lens to things, and that's that's different as well.
Yeah, and a good call out around the bias and how that impacts people. So I think, it's so interesting where we've gone with this conversation because you can see how messy things can get when it comes to friendship in general, but friendships at work. I think we have time for one more question.
Let's do it.
We've got this list of questions. Is there anything
which we've completely ignored?
We've completely ignored. We've completely written off almost all of the questions on there.
Some of them we've covered.
We've covered, in a roundabout way. Is there one question on there that you're like, I really wanted to talk about this because there's some good ones. I'm like, I can't choose. I'm too.
Well, I was kind of curious because in the post that you had written, which sparked, which had the poll and everything, you said you have strong views.
Oh, yeah, I have strong views.
What's your strong views?
My strong view is that I believe you can be friends with the people you manage, but it comes back to the exact thing we talked about, which is you need to define what friendship is. And if your version of friendship is we have really honest, candid, tough conversations, which is my version, as I've already mentioned, then yes, absolutely. And I think I've had versions of this where I've got friends who I've stayed friends with from different workplaces, and I've had friends that I've been really close with in a work sense, and as soon as we finish up, that as soon as I leave that organisation or they've left, we lose contact. And I kind of haven't really settled in my mind, Steph, on is that odd to be so close with someone and then as soon as you quit or they quit, you don't see them anymore and don't speak to them anymore. And I think that's been one of my wrestles with friendships at work because I feel that's strange.
I don't think, though, it means that those friendships weren't real or weren't close or weren't meaningful, though. I think it's just that is just the weird nature of those types of friendships, that you're in this kind of bubble of this workplace, whatever, and you've got that proximity, which we talked about. And actually, Robin Dunbar, who did the work around like although it has been contested, but the work around like you can only have like 150 people, that type of the size thing. So he did some other work, and he said like in your kind of inner circle and your kind of next inner circle, so it's around 4 or 5 people in your inner circle that you're like closest with, and then the next level is about another 10 people, so you're kind of 15. Basically, you need to see them at least once a week or so.
Wow.
And his research shows that in order to really do that, you probably need to live within half an hour of each other. But actually that gets kind of thrown in the bin with work stuff, because where you live is kind of irrelevant. You're coming to the same place every day, or more or less every day, certainly in the old times. Maybe that's the thing around the remote stuff. That's another interesting thing. But yeah, so I think that we kind of create, again, though, those conditions are right for a really intense and intimate friendship, because you're seeing each other so often, because you're doing more than the Dunbar kind of numbers and model and things.
Oh, that's such a good explainer too, because then I think once you lose, as we said, frequency and proximity, it fizzles out.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you said, because I have wrestled with that at times. There are some other really...
It's not you. There we go. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Well, who knows? It could have projected the stress onto them, and they're like, bye. See ya. I don't have to deal with this anymore. We had some good follow-up questions. I think I'm going to tack them onto another episode and I'll just seed this for a future episode. I wanted to ask you about the link between loneliness and burnout, because I think I have wondered, with the increasing feeling of loneliness and isolation, and probably that's partly social media. This is all speculation. I've got no research to back this up, but like social media plus remote working, people feeling lonely, but then like increasing rates of burnout. Is it that we're lacking community? So I would love to talk about that. Let's park that for a future episode. Now, Steph, people are going to want to connect with you. What is the best way for them to do that?
Best place, a couple of best places. LinkedIn is probably my proximity and frequency place. So
unfortunately.
For now. So Steph Clarke with an E on the end on LinkedIn. And if you do Steph Clarke Futurist, that's usually kind of is a good to pull me to the top of the search list. The other place, I have a friendship Substack called How to Friend. So you can find me on Substack posting about friendship.
And book to come.
Book to come, yeah.
And any organisations out there, Steph runs an amazing business called 28 Thursdays. She's a facilitator and futurist, and she does amazing work with so many organisations around Australia. So check her out. Thanks for hanging out.
If you have enjoyed the show today, forward it to a friend, colleague, or family member who you may think it would benefit. Shelley's business Boldside provides leadership training for a variety of different businesses. To learn more, visit boldside.com.au. If you would like to book Shelley to speak at one of your events, please reach out to the team via moneypodcast.com.au.